About a month ago, I took off a few days and I went down to Tennessee, the southern part of Tennessee, to the the Smoky Mountains, Smoky Mountain National Park. And I went out doing some hiking each day. And on one of the first days, I took this trail that led to a waterfall. Now, it was not a especially difficult trail, and it was not isolated. I'm smart enough that I don't go on trails where I might run into a bear. So I made sure it was a trail where there were other people coming and going, but it was early, so there were not that many people, and lots of time I would be walking alone, which was a great time for reflection. And as I'm going down the trail, I realized it was on the edge of the mountain, and to my left it went down into a valley, and to the right it went up. But right there, the one place where I stopped, there was an outcropping of rock, big stones facing me. But the amazing thing was, there was a crack in the rocks, and growing out of that crack was a tree. And it was a pretty good-sized tree, and the roots were all over the rocks right now. And all I could surmise was that sometime years ago, thanks to a bird or maybe the wind, a seed had fallen into a little crevice. And it had enough moisture and nutrition and that inner yearning for the sunlight that it started to grow. And as it grew, it was able to put out roots, and probably with the strength of those roots, it even created a bigger crevice, and it kept on growing to where it is today. I looked at it, I marveled at what I saw, and because I knew that Easter was coming up, in my mind, immediately it clicked. This is going to be the Easter homily. Boy, I'm glad I got invited to come here. I already had the homily ready. Because there's nothing that I can think of as a better symbol for new life than a seed. And there's almost nothing I can think of that is more not life and more obtuse than a rock. And you put the two together, and the seed, the life, will not be denied. Even in the crevice of rock, it's going to grow, and it's going to show new life. And that is the image of the gospel reading today. Basically, the tomb was a rock. It was hewn out of stone, it says. And life could not be contained in the rock. This is probably the most simple of all of the resurrection accounts, but it's also very powerful. Mary Magdalene, early in the morning, she's an early riser. She goes to the tomb. She's probably the only one not afraid of the soldiers. You know, the disciples are still scared. But Mary goes there and she finds the tomb is rolled away and the body's gone. So she runs back to Peter and John. Now, if you notice, this is being written by St. John, so he doesn't use his own name. He simply says, and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. She tells them, and so they both go running to the tomb together. Now, if this were 15 or 20 years ago, and if I was preaching here on this gospel passage, in my mind, seeing the two disciples run, Peter and John, I would have thought of Father Al and me. And of course, I would have outrun him. Now, if I tell the story, I think of Father Jeff and me. And I have a hunch he would outrun me. But John gets there first. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. He says, of course I arrived early, but I'm so humble that I stayed outside and I let the old man go in first. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. He deferred to him. But here's the important thing. When John did enter the tomb, it says, he saw and believed. He saw and believed. So I keep asking myself, what did he see that led him to believe? Now, some scripture scholars say that he saw the burial cloths all folded up, which meant the body had probably not been stolen or robbed and taken away. There might be some truth to that. But I think what happened is John saw that it was rock. He saw that it was stone. And he knew that rock could not contain life. The Lord's life, the resurrected life, was greater. You know, we use that phrase all the time, seeing is believing. John didn't see a whole lot. Maybe it should be believing is seeing, because he already believed in the Lord. He had this relationship, the disciple Jesus loved. He had a relationship. He already believed in Jesus somehow as the Lord. And it was just for him, it was just a small step to believe that the Lord is risen, even without seeing him. Believing is seeing. And that's what we have today. Through the eyes of faith, we can see the risen Lord. Now, here's the danger. 2,000 years have passed. And if we're not careful, we can just think this was a great event 2,000 years ago, and we could get excited about it, and we say, this is wonderful. Jesus has conquered death. He has conquered sin on the cross, and he's risen to new life, and we should rejoice. And the answer is yes, we should. But there's always more. There's always more. Because it's not just in the past, it's in the present as well. You see, the seed of life, the seed of resurrected life, is in us. We have been called to new life. And that new life is in our hearts and in our soul. It should not be denied. And it doesn't want to dwell in stony hearts. And if our heart is stony because we're filled with anger or prejudice or vindictiveness or hatred that closes the world off to other people we don't like, we have to let the seed grow and break out. And the seed of resurrected life was given to us at baptism. St. Paul said, when we're baptized, it's like going into the water, going into the tomb, and coming out to a resurrected life, a new beginning. That's what's happened. And that's what happens within us. This life cannot be denied. And yet sometimes we don't pay it much attention. It's in us already. Let it grow. I love this time of the year because one of my personal favorite things to do is to take advantage of the early spring, go out to the woods where all the flowers start blooming. The wildflowers are just starting. I went out this week. And I have a number of different wooded places I go to, and I have a regular checklist of all the wildflowers I like to see every year. I take pictures of the same things every year. I guess I never learned. But I always want to somehow contain it. So I went out this past week, and just the earliest spring beauties and a couple of other flowers are starting to break forth. But what I saw was the floor of the forest is covered with these decaying leaves from last year's crop of trees. The leaves are down. They've been lying there dead all winter. And some of them are clumped up. And yet the new plants are pushing them aside. They push them away because life cannot be denied. The resurrected life is in us. We want to let it break forth so that we can celebrate. The Spirit of the Lord is within us, bringing us to a fullness of life that is beyond our understanding.